From childhood, she kept a diary, which was her only interlocutor. She began writing at the age of 12 at Upper Chine School, a private boarding school on the Isle of Wight. It was a dank state castle where students were cut off from the world. Jane Birkin had no name at the boarding school. Everyone called her Nainty-Nine, 99, after the number of the room she lived in. She got so used to it that she simply would not respond to another name, even on family vacations. Jane Birkin was born into a family of stunningly beautiful actress Judy Campbell and Royal Navy officer David Birkin. On her father's side, Jane is the grandniece of Freda Dudley Ward, a favorite of King Edward VIII of Great Britain, and a cousin of the mathematician and philosopher Bertrand Russell. Her distant relatives are descendants of Charles II, King of Scotland and England. Her aristocratic grandmother, who lived in a Victorian mansion in the north of England, waited for her grandchildren, Andrew and Jane, every holiday. There were frequent power outages in this mysterious old house, and the children thought it was haunted. Noises, rustling, shaking. Jane and Andrew ran around the beach, swimming, hooliganism, searching the beaches for old weapons left over from World War II. Jane was a real tomboy as a child. As a child, she wore her brother's pants, sweaters, and trampled shoes, not realizing that she was turning into a beautiful girl. The day came when she tried on a beautiful dress for the prom, and suddenly everything changed. Brother Andrew said sadly, "It's over." And he was right. She had become a girl, unfurled, with boyish tricks, sharp, unplastic, with long straight hair and huge eyes. And yet, by her own admission, Jane had not learned to be a real woman, to feel her magic and beauty. But it was obvious to those around her. Her photos were accidentally seen at the movie studio and considered very photogenic. So she got her first role in a movie. Her first love was the famous composer John Barry, the author of the famous musical theme to the James Bond films, and in the future, 5-time winner of the Oscar. 17-year-old Jane at the time of their acquaintance dreamed of an acting career and debuted in the musical comedy Passion Flower. The young girl was delighted to receive the attention of such a worthy man, 13 years her senior. Mr. Barry did not wait long to ask for Jane's hand. They were married in 1965. In 1967, the couple had a daughter, Kate. The baby was not even a year old when John Barry left the family. He ran away to America with his best friend Jane. Jane explained everything simply. She considered herself stiff, not sexy, nothing significant in matters of seduction, uninteresting person, shy English woman. 3 years of life with Barry ended in betrayal. After packing her bags and taking her daughter with her, Jane returned to her father's house. She had to start all over again and look for work. Artistic agents offered her to go to the auditions of the film in France. And again, a lucky coincidence. The director found it funny and approved the role, although she spoke almost no French. Jane went to the office where she waited for the producer, director Pierre Grimbley, and her future partner in the film. She knew one thing. If she played a scene successfully, she would take it. So there will be a job, there will be something to feed her daughter and herself. Her partner was a dark-haired man with a hooked nose and a brightly colored shirt, like a bored, vicious dandy. He introduced himself, Serge Gainsbourg. Jane nodded, but his name meant nothing to her and immediately slipped from her mind. As they acted out the script, Birkin kept getting confused and Serge diligently delivered his lines. From the outside, they looked like a comic duo. As they parted, Jane blurted out his name. "Are you Serge what? Bourguignon?" It was the only French dish she had been introduced when she arrived in Paris. Serge was very hurt that Jane had no idea who he was. As Grimbley said later, it was very noticeable that Jane annoyed Gainsbourg with his behavior, terrible French, a lot of mistakes. But he noticed that they perfectly fit the images of the main characters, but their relationship did not work out. Well, and the partner I picked up. This skinny, unattractive girl will not connect 2 words in French. And how can I kiss her when I just had Brigitte Bardot in my arms? Exclaimed Serge, who starred in the movie Slogan. Serge, for God's sake, Do not mention Bardot again. Pierre grimly grabbed his head. Better think about how to make friends with Jane Birkin. To defuse the situation, the director decided to invite Jane and Serge to the restaurant, but he soon disappeared, citing business. These two met when they both experienced a disappointment in life. Jane had left her husband and Serge had left Brigitte Bardot. Thus, with the light hand of Pierre Grimble, a 22-year-old English woman from a decent family and a 40-year-old Don Juan, scandalizer and drunkard, would become the most brilliant and discussed couple in France. Their romance was so loud and bright that it became a model of the bohemian relationship between the musician and his muse. Serge solemnly presented the girl with a book of his lyrics, bound in red leather with the following inscription on the title page: Jane B., to whom I will dedicate many songs in the future. This is so your mother knows and doesn't think you're spending time with someone you don't know. After the restaurant, Gainsbourg continued his tour of entertainment venues, and at dawn, he brought Jane to the Hotel Parisien. At the reception, they checked in. Room 314 as usual, Mr. Gainsbourg. Jane was horrified. She was being taken for a girl of simple virtue. But when you arrive at the hotel in the morning with a man, there is no need to play the insulted innocent. Everything that happened between them was so beautiful that the couple couldn't separate and went to Venice. They rode in gondolas, had fun in bars, danced until they dropped and made love. The first person to tell Jane she was beautiful was Serge Gainsbourg, and it was a revelation to her. She had never judged herself, had never looked at herself from the outside or realized her own merits. She was very flattered that the man who had just broken up with Brigitte Bardot thought she was beautiful. After the peaceful, too quiet everyday life with Barry, formal dinners, evenings at the conservatory, endless yes, dear, and no dear, the turbulent life with Serge seemed significant and real to her. Jane stayed in France forever, taking her daughter Kate away from her parents. Jane was the most beautiful person Serge had met in his tumultuous, dissolute life. This remarkably thin, lanky girl with thick ash-colored hair and almond-shaped blue eyes was the face of the new age, he would say. Calm and passionate, sophisticated and daring, then an innocent girl, then a sophisticated woman. And then came the scandal. Serge and Jane recorded a song by putting the microphone under the bed on which they made love. Wrote journalists when the record G Tame, Moi non plus, I love you, I don't love you either, went into rotation. Gainsbourg laughed. In that case, we'd have a long-playing record. The song was banned in most of Europe for being too sexual. Birkin moaned so convincingly. It topped the charts in France. Serge Gainsbourg became the world's best-selling French pop composer and, together with Jane Birkin, a worldwide celebrity. Thus began their long life together. After 2 years of unofficial marriage, Jane became pregnant. In 1971, a baby girl was born, named Charlotte Lucy Gainsbourg. The baby was so beautiful that the cynical Serge began to cry when he held her. He and Jane became the most talked about and loved couple in Paris. I can't imagine my life without him. I'm ready to go to the ends of the earth for him, said Jane. He is an extraordinary talent. I love him so much. I feel that if I lose him, I'll die. I can't lose him. He became her Pygmalion, writing her songs. But there was a flip side. Gainsbourg, a creative person, a rebellious soul, drank, and Jane could not stop him. She knew the scripts for her evenings with Serge by heart. After tucking Kate and Charlotte in, she would put on a low-cut Courageous minidress, do her makeup, and head out into the night with Serge. They'd be back by 4 in the morning. When she went to bed, she set her alarm for 7 to take the children to school. By the age of 50, Serge Gainsbourg had written songs for almost all the famous French singers, promoted young starlets, acted in films, wrote film music, starred in commercials, composed poetry and prose, and one of his hits won the Eurovision Song Contest for the first time in the history of France. Fate seems to favor me. The press writes about me every day. I have a charming, beloved wife and wonderful children, Kate and Charlotte. There may be things with the music, but at least my personal life is fine. I've been looking for someone like Jane all my life. She's close to my heart. She won't let me down. So many years together. One day Jane rebelled. She was tired of coming home in the morning, with difficulty to get into the keyhole with the key, to support the hand-drunken shreds Serge, not to sleep, to see her children grow up. I had to live, and with him I was slowly dying, Jane would say later. In their house, according to the order Serge had established, everything had its place. It was forbidden to move chairs, armchairs, books on shelves. I have a mess in my head, so I want everything to be in perfect order, Serge used to say. He even arranged the food in the refrigerator so that it looked like a work of art. He ordered a refrigerator with transparent walls. There was never daylight in their house. The curtains on the windows were always carefully closed. Because daylight prevented Serge from working, he wrote his songs at night. Horses' doses of alcohol, coffee, cigarettes would have broken anyone long ago. At 45, Serge had his first heart attack. Jane cried and begged him to at least stop smoking. In her heart, she said, "Okay, I'll kill myself first." And she smoked for the first time in front of him. And what happened? Now she smokes like a locomotive and Serge smokes 5 packs of Gitanes. Jane is fed up with a lot of things. "I can't live with you anymore. I'm sorry. I love you. You know that, but I can't live with you." Gainsbourg looked at Jane in surprise and took a drag on the Gitanes. She is no longer a little girl. She has become completely different. "You can go, Jane, but you'll stay here forever." She took it as just another catchphrase. After 13 years, Jane took the children and moved to a hotel. She soon realized that Serge wasn't joking. He ordered a life-size statue of Jane, and she stood in his living room. To enhance the effect, Gainsbourg covered her with bronze paint to make her look more like an antique statue. Then he cut off her head. He disliked the expression on her face, arms, and legs. The result was the perfect woman in Serge's mind. He turned Jane's room into a museum. Everything remained as it had been when she had been there. He believed their separation was temporary. Serge gave Jane a silver Porsche, wrote a farewell song for her, and then dedicated an entire album to her, just as he had done after he broke up with Brigitte Bardot. Serge declared in a public voice, "In my 52 years, I have learned a lesson in suffering. Among those who listen to this program, there are many who consider me a cynic. I've been crying for months. And believe me, I've never felt so bad. Jane left because of me. I was mean to her. She tried to get me out, and I hit her. I'm sorry." Serge seemed so miserable and defenseless that Jane vowed to visit him, to see if he was eating hot food, if he was desperate, and if he was not too close to the windows. They were on duty in pairs with Brigitte Bardot. Sometimes Catherine Deneuve would come by. She was worried too. During one of these visits, Serge snapped and shouted that he could take care of himself and that he even knew how. And he did. He dated women, argued on TV shows, berated journalists, drank a lot more, and spit on doctors' orders. He got a new girlfriend, a 20-year-old model, Caroline von Paulus, nicknamed Bomba. Silly and malleable, so much like Jane in her youth. "If you do not stop drinking and smoking, you will go blind in 6 months, and in a year you will die," doctors told Gainsbourg doctors. "I don't care," Serge replied. He made a lot of noise and had a lot of fun, and yet he was terribly lonely. Bamba lived in the apartment he rented. He wouldn't let anyone else in. In 1986, Bamba and Serge had a son. On nights when no one wanted to talk to him on the phone, Serge would take a bottle and new records and go to the police station, where he would drink with police officers until morning. In moments of candor, he would tell the board officers on duty the contents of his posthumous interview that he had jokingly given to the newspaper Liberation 10 years ago. "I died on a cold night in 1990, so began the interview." Gainsbourg got the date slightly wrong. On March 2, 1991, Bamboo could not reach Serge. She ran to Rue Verneuil, but no one opened the door. She didn't have a key. Gainsbourg didn't trust her. Bamba called the police. They found Serge dead on the bed. The cause of death was a heart attack. He was buried in the Montparnasse Cemetery, next to Sartre, Huysmans, and Baudelaire. On his grave, there is always a pack of fresh guitanes. A few words about the life of Jane Birkin. In 1981, when Jane starred in the movie Prodigal Daughter, there was a romance between her and the cult French director Jacques Drouin. It led to Jane's third marriage and the birth of her third daughter, Lou. Jane became a style icon. With her hair, her love of simple t-shirts, little dresses, cashmere sweaters, and jeans. With her basket miraculously transformed into one of the most expensive handbags bearing the Birkin name. The death of Gainsbourg, who was not even 62, shook Birkin to the core, who blamed herself, thinking that if she had stayed with him, she would have saved him from alcohol and, of course, from death, and that their separation brought Serge's untimely death closer. Friends, thank you for watching. Support the channel by subscribing, liking, or commenting. And see you in new exciting videos.